thought I'd do something different today. Also, obviously I'm sitting up for a change, and it's been a while since we've done a video from the kitchen, but here we go anyway. And I thought I'd just do the wheelchair tag. This video was started by Jem Hubbard on Wheels No Heels, and it seems to be taking the internet a bit by storm, so here goes. The first question is, why do you need a wheelchair? And I use a wheelchair because I have cerebral palsy primarily. I've also got some spinal damage from falls and things as well that I got when I was older. But cerebral palsy is the primary reason that I use a wheelchair. Cerebral palsy is a neurological condition. In my case, it was caused because I was born prematurely, 3 months prematurely. And I stopped breathing a lot, and it caused damage to my brain, and it gives me problems with motor control and things primarily in my legs, but to a lesser degree in my arms. So that's why I use a wheelchair. The second question is are you a full-time or part-time wheelchair user? And I use a wheelchair full-time and have done for the past 20 years or so. I was a part-time wheelchair user when I was younger, but my walking deteriorated a lot when I got into my mid-teenage years, and by my late teens and early 20s I was in a wheelchair full-time, and I am 41 now, so that's the answer to the second question. The third question is your wheelchair manual or electric? My wheelchair is a manual wheelchair. I'll insert some pictures of it in here. It is a Quickie Argon 2 in the colour bubblegum pink, I think it is, and it's about 18 months old now. It's one of my favourite wheelchairs I've had, and it's a rigid frame. This means it doesn't fold in the middle like some wheelchairs. The back will fold down, and I have a lateral trunk support that I will insert a picture of here. The trunk support means that because I have difficulty controlling my own body, the trunk support keeps me in position and prevents my scoliosis from getting worse. And also sometimes I can pass out due to medication, and it also prevents me falling out of my chair sideways when this happens. That was a problem a few years ago, before my spinal curve got worse and before we got a better handle on me passing out all over the place. But that's it for this question, sorry. The next question is, what cushion do you use? And the cushion I have currently is the Invicare Flo-tech Matrix. I'll put a link to it or a photo of it in this video as well. It's been a lovely cushion. Before the Invicare Flo-tech Matrix, I had a selection of J cushions. When I first had, well, in my later years, in the first private wheelchair I had a J basic cushion because I was still walking a bit then, didn't only use the wheelchair outside, and then when I went into the wheelchair full time I had problems with pressure and need for pressure relief, and so I had a J2 cushion then, and then I had a J2 deep contour after that, and now I have the Invicare Flo-tech Matrix. This one I've liked the best because it isn't as heavy for taking off the chair to, if the chair has to go into the car, and also it has a waterproof cover, and because I have problems with incontinence and so forth, it's very easy to clean, which the J cushions weren't so much. So and the covers of the J's used to disintegrate quite easily in the wash, and because of the gel in the J's they would crease and you wouldn't necessarily know whether you'd entirely got them clean, and you could find some very disgusting things in the crevices of the gel, which was a bit grotty. So I'm very pleased with this cushion so far. I also have Invicare posture control back. I'll also put a picture of that as well. And that's, I had the posture control back on my previous chair, which was an Otterbock chair, but when I had the new chair they took the old back off the Otterbock and put this back on the new chair. So I haven't, this is my only chair at the moment, because they used the brackets and the back off the old chair, so if anything went wrong with this chair my dad would probably have to swap them over to if I needed the other chair in an emergency. But this is currently my only wheelchair. It has a few issues, like long hair like mine tends to get stuck around the casters. I was hoping that this chair would be slightly different than the previous chairs I've had, but it seemingly is just as bad as the Otterbock chairs used to be. The only thing is that this is a rigid frame and it's much more durable than the Otterbocks that were. I had an Otterbock Avant-Garde T before, and they looked like a rigid frame, but they folded up in the middle, and it caused a lot of problems getting into taxis and things because taxi drivers wouldn't know how to do it properly, and they've broken bits off and various things. So it was just easier to have this kind of rigid frame where there was less breakages, and it was more stable overall. So yeah. Sorry, I've got the next question is, what is your dream wheelchair? I don't really know what my dream wheelchair would be. I'd quite like something that would maybe tilt in space because of the problems with my hip, or sort of recline or enable me to change position more easily. Or maybe I would like, well, maybe a power chair, but because my distance vision can be very disturbed, I don't entirely trust that I would be safe I did have a power chair just before my mum passed away, and years ago I had one as well when I lived at the flats, but also there was at the flats where I used to live, but there was a lot crossing, there was a crossing then, and so I could more easily cross the road, and now I'm not so good at judging distances, so I wouldn't trust that I would be able to like negotiate things safely. And also because my reflexes aren't as good as they were, I don't know if people stepped in front of me whether I could stop in time, so I'm trying to stick to a manual chair, and because also it helps to keep me fit. So says, what is the most useful skill you've learnt since being in a wheelchair? The most useful skill I've learnt was one of the hardest, and it's sort of carrying a cup of tea in the house. I still can't do this when I'm out and about very easily, but I can manoeuvre a cup of tea from my workspace to my other table, which is over there, and that took me a long time to learn, but it is one of my most useful skills that I have. What trick do you wish you could do? One trick I wish I could do would be to put well, it's quite a difficult thing. I'd like to be able to get up curbs on my own. That would be useful, because I wouldn't have to then be relying on finding a drop curb or be relying on other people. I'd quite like to be able to collapse my own chair and put it in a car, but then since I can't drive, that is a bit that would be a bit of a moot point. So another question is, what is the best thing about being in a wheelchair? Now this is quite a sort of difficult thing in some ways, because I do miss walking in lots of ways, but I like being able to have my nephews and my friends' children like on my knee. That's nice. Like when they were little, I could pick them up and put them on my knee, which was good in a way that I would never have been able to do standing up. And I get less pain than when I walked in many respects, or at least the pain is different. And I'm probably safer because I don't fall on the floor nearly as often. The next question is, what is the worst thing about being in a wheelchair? And for me, the worst thing is not being able to go and visit the houses of my friends, or most of the houses of my friends, because they aren't wheelchair accessible. And this means that you miss out a lot on the spontaneity of life. And I can't go and see my friend, if they move house, I can't go and see the new house very easily, and I can't see the upstairs of the house, even if I see the downstairs and all that sort of thing. So that's quite an easy sort of thing. And when I'm outside of my own surroundings, things are a lot more difficult, and I need more help. So that's the worst thing. What's my favourite accessory? Now this is quite difficult. I've got quite a few. I was going to show you, I've got a small bag that's on the side of my wheelchair, and it's a cycling pannier that should go underneath the seat on a bicycle. However, I put the bag on upside down in the curve of my wheelchair, and it fitted just fine and was a fraction of the price of the specifically designed wheelchair bags. And I'm just able to keep my keys and sometimes like a wallet in there if I'm not going too far, but I wanted to keep my keys in there so that it prevents me from locking myself out, because obviously my wheelchair is always with me and I'm always in, you know, so if I have the keys kept in my chair, then there's no way I can lock myself out. So I thought that was fairly ingenious, really. So it says, what is the stupidest question you've ever been asked in a wheelchair? I've been asked several X-rated questions about being in a wheelchair that I wouldn't mention on YouTube. Maybe the stupidest one that I would feel comfortable mentioning on here is, do you mind being in a chair? Because, well, nobody, I don't think, would want to be in a wheelchair actively go out of their way to be in a chair. Maybe, I don't know, maybe I'm wrong. But there are many. I kind of found that a stupid question to ask, or do you miss being able to walk was another one. Well, yeah, so that concludes the questions in this tag. If any of you want to do your own wheelchair tag, or even a tag about any of the aids that you use, feel free, and you can maybe comment what you might want to do in your own videos. I'll see you in my next video. Bye.